everyone just thinks a building should work and operate. But what actually goes on behind the scenes from the world of FM is a lot of firefighting. When you go in, there's probably 100, if not 1,000 alarms that are just going off on the BMS, and they just become noise.
How do you keep abreast of all these changes that are made? It's got to be a thankless task.
AI agent isn't going to be able to stop a flood or unblock a toilet. There are no large language models for building performance. A smart building is one that is making use of that data.
So welcome to The Good, The Bad, The PropTech. I'm delighted today to be joined by Will Hulls, or William Hulls, the Chief Revenue Officer of the one and only Demand Logic, one of the original energy management platforms here in the UK. And hopefully today we'll go through a little bit about what DL do, Demand Logic do, and hopefully touch on a few of the challenges and opportunities out there with the wonderful world of PropTech. So Will, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's good. Well, look, I think probably the best place to start is for those that don't know who Demand Logic are. Can you give us a quick insight into what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. Demand Logic is a many-faceted company. We're effectively a data analytics, FDD, building optimization platform. FDD is fault detection diagnostics.
Okay.
So it's becoming more and more prevalent in the industry, specifically around engineering and facilities management. But it's effectively being able to identify faults, diagnose them, and detect them through a platform, which is the bread and butter of what Demand Logic do in amongst how we identify optimization opportunities within a building.
Okay. So that's probably quite an easy thing to explain to someone at a dinner party, what that is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nodder if you get the right people and you spend your entire life talking about facilities management and data in properties. They tend to move away from me at dinner parties.
Just feel like this is really interesting, but it has nothing to do with my life. So like the world of operational technology is a pretty broad one, but I suppose in what you guys are trying to do or what you do, like is it all around energy saving? Is it broken bits of kit? Like what's the holy grail of DL?
So the holy grail for us, we look at three main KPIs.
Okay.
So one of which is energy. We're not an energy management company. We're not an energy consultancy, but we look at effectively optimizing the building performance to avoid wasted energy.
Okay.
And that could be simultaneous heating and cooling, erroneous run times of plant and equipment. But fundamentally, we plug into the building, get the data out of the building, and then we monitor and optimize every single aspect of that, which energy is the byproduct. So energy savings, cost avoidance. From a maintenance perspective, we utilize the data from the assets themselves, from the network, to identify how you can be more efficient, more effective from a maintenance perspective, and how you can take the data and not wait for complaints and comfort calls within an industry that is literally built on reactive calls and reactive repairs, and try and use that data to be a bit more efficient, more effective, directing those teams with the FDD to where the issues are and where the issues lie.
But so for those that don't know what might go on in the windowless basement rooms of buildings, like why is there a need for Demand Logic? Like surely all buildings are commissioned, they're BREEAM, they're sustainably run. Like why is there a need for what you guys do? Surely it's all there in the BMS already.
If it was that simple, it would be lovely. But we wouldn't have a company, I don't think. So Demand Logic was actually born out of frustration. Our CEO, co-founder, and our co-founding team, but Mike Darby in particular, he used to work in controls in building services, and he was getting extremely frustrated at looking at a building management system, as you say, in a basement on a Windows XP computer screen or Windows 7, and all of the iterations before with very Excel-led ways of monitoring things, but all of the information that's running and controlling the building. So you have set points, you have run times of all of this energy hungry plant. So your boilers, your chillers, your air handling units. And that is ultimately what's providing the comfort to the floors. And that's all of the building services. That's all being run from a system that's usually on a dusty PC in a basement. And historically, nothing was being done with that data. Nothing. Like the BMS was very good at telling things to come on and off, what temperatures to get to and what temperatures to turn off at. But no one was taking that data from an analysis perspective and looking at things retrospectively, because BMS aren't designed, especially 15 years ago, they weren't designed to have any kind of like provision of cache or memory or anything in there that's looking backwards. It's just a point in time, similar to a thermostat at home.
Yeah.
You don't have the history, you don't have anything. So what Mike wanted to do is harness that data and then try and understand what's going on from a higher level perspective and try and pinpoint things. And BMS themselves are very, very good. When not in the, I mean, we go through a BMS. A lot of people get misinterpreted that we go in and put in BMS to buildings, or BMS are rubbish. They don't do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
They do exactly what they're supposed to do if they're programmed correctly.
Is that quite a big caveat though?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
We've got a commissioning tool called CX Logic, which works with commissioning teams in new builds and redevelopments, where you effectively can take all of the data out, because what BMS are very good at doing is making assets work and run and operate. But if you're looking at a BMS and trying to fault find and diagnose things, as an engineer, you have to know exactly what you're looking for.
Okay.
So you might have to go through 45 pages to get to an individual asset.
Yeah.
And that's only if you know what asset you're looking for.
Okay.
So the reason why Demand Logic was created is to take all of that data out of the BMS, out of the network, and bring it upstairs onto a computer screen and make it understandable by someone who's not a commissioning engineer or a controls engineer.
Yeah.
Or even a building services engineer. And we do that by consolidating all of the data and contextualizing the data. We might plug into a building and there's 340,000 data points in there.
Oh, that's crazy.
Taking that data out, turning that into 7 boilers, 6 chillers, 14 air handling units is much easier to understand for anyone looking at it. And being able to illustrate, this is the time that assets are supposed to be running, but they're all running 24/7. It's much easier to understand once it's in, I say black and white, but red, amber, green on our platform.
Bit of colours in there.
Yeah. So being able to contextualize that is giving the visibility and the understanding.
Yeah.
And then we've taken it a step further now with our scoring tooling, which is effectively
like a score.
Yeah. We tried to take everything. Well, we score every single aspect all the way down to an individual coil in a fan coil unit. Every single component has a score, which builds up to an asset score, and then a zone score, floor score, building score, portfolio score.
Okay.
And we're trying to gamify the industry in the sense of, how do you know your building's working well? So each of those KPIs that I mentioned earlier, energy, maintenance, comfort, all have a score out of 100. So you might have a portfolio, and we've got portfolios of sort of hundreds of buildings. Being able to give an asset manager or a property manager a list of buildings and telling them what is their best and worst performing building, as well as what's improved the most or degraded the most from the previous month, in our opinion, is much more useful than just giving them a PPM report.
Yeah. What PPM, plan predictive maintenance report. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is, I can see the value in kind of taking the legacy complicated in a windowless basement somewhere and bringing it upstairs. I think the concept of bringing it upstairs is something that we're obviously quite passionate about, in that when we ask people about PropTech, like a lot of it is in those windowless basements. And in bringing it upstairs or out or into the daylight, hopefully, do you see, you obviously mentioned for asset management value, do you see it as being something that is communicated to the people who occupy the building? Like, do you see Demand Logic as being part of a brochure to say Demand Logic's in a building, therefore your comfort score will be X?
I wouldn't say, do I see it? It happens.
It happens, okay.
We're in buildings and we're on brochures of buildings saying this building is powered by Demand Logic, or it has Demand Logic analytics in there. And that's one of the big things for our customers. And not just with the BMS data, but we can also supplement that with indoor air quality data. So then you can start getting a bit more contextualization around the scoring when you're introducing things like CO2 monitoring, air quality, like humidity, temperature, volatile organic compounds. And then that all drives towards, we make sure for our customers to advertise the building, we make sure your building is at these levels, and we've got all of this technology and analysis behind us with automated breaches, understanding when that temperature, when the air quality is dropping, we will fix it. It's part of our daily workarounds from our FM teams to say these are the worst affected areas, and they will prioritize that.
Go and fix it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it's part of a brochure narrative, because I think sometimes there's so many things in PropTech that you could put on a brochure, and sometimes it's just slapped with an accreditation badge of silver or bronze or platinum, and you're not quite sure what sits behind it. Whereas actually, if you can explain to someone succinctly, this thing equals this for you, hopefully it means that there is a value because they understand it, as opposed to it being in a building and the people occupying it having no idea that the comfort's looked after because they assume that's kind of what the building does.
Yeah, I think that's a massive thing in the industry. And in terms of understanding, it's difficult for me to decompartmentalize, because sort of 15, 16 years in facilities management, smart buildings, it's just something that I know about. But
a lot of people don't know about it, right?
If you go to
a dinner party and you sit with other people, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, it's actually really interesting. It's like, is it?
Everyone just thinks a building should work and operate, and it should be clean, and it should be lit, and it should have power and everything that goes through. But what actually goes on behind the scenes is, from the world of FM, it's a lot of firefighting, because you're constantly running against the grain. You might have 1,000 people in a building, 400 of them are hot, 600 of them are cold, and they're all saying, can we have more cooling? Can we have more heating? And the FM teams on site are constantly battling humans against how the building's supposed to operate. And that, again, going back to an earlier point, that's if the building's been set up correctly.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to completely tail off now, but that's becoming more of an issue in terms of buildings not being set up properly, because projects are being delayed and plan completions are not allowed to move because tenants might be lined up for a building. That building needs to be completed because the tenants are moving in. And the tail end of the commissioning process is making sure that all of the building systems are balanced and making sure that environmental testing's happened, and that all gets rushed through. And because everyone wants to get off site and make sure the building's got PCs, so being able to get everything done that would usually be a 6-month period in 2 months.
Wow. Okay.
Is becoming more common. Projects are getting constantly delayed. And we've seen the demise of some big infrastructure development companies. And I think now the remaining ones are getting a bit more squeezed in terms of timelines and things. And
so do you think, from a knowledge base of the asset manager, knowing about those things from a construction delivery perspective, like how, if you get the certificate and it says everything's tickety-boo, is there a way we can mitigate it? Is it part of if I was going in, if I'm a tenant and they're going in to take a lease over from somebody, like, should commissioning validation be, as opposed to, it's fine, looking at the timeline? Do you think it's that important to move into a building and find out that you've got 600 people that are hot or cold? Or is it too niche to know that? Or
it's probably too niche, and there is a lot of expectation that things are just done.
Yeah.
And if a box has been ticked and it's been signed off as this has achieved plan completion, then everyone goes, fine, let's move in.
Yeah.
And then it's only once they move in, and depending on the type of development, if you then have a tenant that goes in and they start moving around partition walls and not accounting for where sensors are, and they put in their own assets, or they want a comms room in a certain area and they do their own refit on that floor, that could upset everything within the system anyway. So,
but that, I suppose, is one of the things we see. We call it mind the gap between construction and operation.
Yep.
So in the world of which you guys get involved with, you work in both construction projects and existing assets. Because buildings don't stand still, is it like a never-ending task that, because you have a different owner, a different operator, a different occupier, a new fit out, how do you keep abreast of all these changes that are made? It's got to be a thankless task.
It's not so much a thankless task for us. It's the FM teams and the building management teams. That's one of the points I was coming on to earlier, but I went down a wayward track.
That's all right.
Like, the people in these buildings expect stuff just to be done. The FMs have so much to do, but without visibility of what's actually happening, like a hard services company will have a planned maintenance regime that they have to do. They'll labor load that in terms of winning a contract, and that will stipulate how many hours and therefore how many engineering hours they allocate to a site.
Yeah.
They might have some reactive data of how many hot and cold calls have come in previously, or they take an assumption, all the bits and bobs putting together an FM contract. They then put that team in and they're tasked with doing those planned maintenance tasks. And then they've got 50% more reactive tasks than what they were told. And they're running somewhat blindly because, as I said, the BMS head end, which is effectively the brain nerve center of the building, is hidden in the basement and someone's lost the password so they can't get access to it.
Or it's stuck on a post-it note with it.
Yeah, or they can't necessarily get hold of the controls contractor, or they end up having to call out the controls contractor. So largely they're running blind, and they're running around constantly trying to make the building work, make the tenants happy, all the while achieving 52 KPIs monthly that they have to report on to their customer. So I'd say it's the FM teams that do get the stick, and they're never getting the carrot. And what we're trying to do is help them and the building managers and property managers, but giving them the data and the insight to help enable that process to be a bit more smoother, and that 1 or 2% extra capacity that you can get from sitting down and seeing what are the major tasks, what's potentially going to be an issue coming up, can have a huge difference.
Yeah, and I suppose probably a big part I'd imagine is transparency. Right? Yeah. When you've got occupiers there asking for those comfort scores, do you think, is that something you're seeing as being more of a trend, like businesses wanting to know that all of these things are being done, or is transparency an important facet for you and for the platform?
I don't necessarily agree full transparency, because if you've got 200 people on the floor and you start giving them visibility of the temperatures and the air quality levels, even if they don't feel something, there's the impact of, 24 degrees is hot. I'm really hot all of a sudden. Why is it so hot? So you almost invite, if you give too much information, too much data without much context, it invites questions and sometimes negative feedback. Or it's there's different ways and different models of doing it. But in terms of transparency with the client team, absolutely not necessarily
every single person
in that building.
Otherwise you'd be firefighting, like trying to drink through a hose kind of thing. If everyone's got an opinion about something, it's like, I'm too hot, I'm too cold. It's like you're sat next to each other, you've got the same temperature. It's probably a human thing, not a building thing.
Absolutely. And as soon as you enter humans into any scenario, it always becomes a bit more complicated, because then you have feelings and emotions, and you have physical attributes. Someone might have gone for a run at lunch and come back, and then they're saying they're really hot. And
so I probably guess you went for a run.
Yeah.
But look, I think in anything that we've seen in energy management in buildings, and typically the first thing that I'm sure you probably get asked a lot is return on investment.
We never get asked that.
You never get asked that.
No,
Good.
I'm
glad. But as in, has the industry moved away from just going, this is how you run a building well, to you must prove return on investment for us to invest in what you're doing?
I wouldn't go so far as to say the industry's moved away from it.
Okay.
Because fundamentally everything needs to be calculated, and everything does somewhat need to have a return.
Yeah.
Historically, especially, and still in some ways, the calculation of what an ROI is very black and white, and that needs to change. Because if you look at from a building's perspective, if they say, what's your ROI of plugging into our building? And you say, in what context? They'll say energy savings. And the energy savings could be absolutely huge. But if the actions that we've identified haven't been completed by the site team, then it's not a realized return, it's an opportunity. So in terms of that ROI, we have very, very strong ROI just in energy alone.
Yeah.
But where we want to get to is it's the value of having the system, having the knowledge, having the insight of your team are happier, your tenants are happier, your building's performing better. What's the ROI on that? And if we ask questions of, or how many of your people have stayed at the company without leaving because the building's improved, or how much have you saved on your DLAP costs exiting a building because the assets have been better run and they've not been run into the ground as much. So you can take it to the nth degree of where you're looking at an ROI, but from a pure energy perspective, it's always going to be there because people want to measure something. And we like to think that the way in which we've delivered the platform, the way in which you can see the scores and the improvement over time, as well as the financial aspect, we can illustrate that there is a return on investment as well as a future cost avoidance aspect as well.
Yeah. I suppose the reason why I ask it is because we see the number of amenities going into buildings just going up and up and up, whether it's a new gym, whether it's a meeting room. And whenever we see the challenge of what's the return on investment, I always say, well, what's the return on investment of the new reception desk or the feature lighting you had handmade in Switzerland or whatever it might be? And contextually, a building platform that is optimizing the energy, improving the comfort score has to prove a really detailed ROI. But there are certain things in real estate that can just be, because you can see it, touch it, feel it, experience
Tangible,
it, doesn't, it's tangible. So that's why I suppose we talk about that transparency bit of it going from the engineer's brain and what they see and do into a conversation with an occupier about the comfort score. And that's where hopefully you start to move away from we can reduce your energy by turning everything off and give you a fantastic ROI, but you'll have 600 people shouting at you every day. Like, ROI is proven, but you've got a load of angry tenants. So we're hoping to see that the challenge will move away from just SaaS fees, this savings of that. That makes sense.
I mean, fundamentally, because the industry, although it's very mature in the UK, especially, it's still relatively immature as an industry and tech adoption. And
why is that?
It's a slow moving industry. There's so many moving facets within property, and ultimately everyone is a customer in property because the facilities manager will have subcontractors underneath them, and the facilities manager's customer is often the property manager, and then the property manager's customer is the asset manager, the asset manager's customer is the fund manager's customers are the investors.
Yeah.
So you are miles removed from the actual end client in terms of that adoption, but also property companies tend to be larger organizations.
Okay.
And trying to get mass adoption in any large industry, any large customer base where you have people involved and different customers within that, they will struggle to have a one size fits all. Because if you're a facilities manager, you might have a banking client who really wants to do something, but then you might have a government client that wants to do something else. And from a company's perspective, whether it's a facilities management or a property management company, they're quite hesitant to go, this is what we do, this is how we do it. They can say this is our boilerplate, this is how we do it, but we can
be flexible.
Yeah, we can do what you want, Mr. Customer, if you give us the contract.
Yeah.
We can move and change.
But do you think, with sustainability being front and center for most people, and given any platform, let alone Demand Logic's, like the value drivers of making a building more sustainable as opposed to the comfort score as well, has sustainability accelerated adoption in it? Is it changing, or has it been a flash in the pan over the last few years?
I think it was our kicker initially.
Okay.
I think it's the thing that really kicked Demand Logic on to have this demonstrable savings off the back of being able to have this visibility. And I think as a company, we're sort of maturing beyond that because we've got lots of other aspects of deliverables, the whole workflow piece of embedding the teams and making sure the workflow aspect of everyone working together to achieve the outcome, that fundamentally has the savings. So it's that hearts and minds piece of getting everyone on board, not saying this is how you do this, how you have to do it. The old adage of you can have as much data as you want, but unless you do something with it, it's useless.
Yeah.
We've sort of taken that to the next level of when we get a contract or we get a new building, getting the onboarding and the workflows initiated with the team off the back of 10, 11, 12 years experience is key to making anything work in this industry, because you need buy-in from all levels.
PropTech's a weird one where sometimes the buyer is not the user.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd imagine if you'd done the hearts and minds with an owner of a portfolio and then gone, great, well, off you go, here's my buildings, and you rock up to those buildings and have all those, it might be different property managers, different facilities managers. That's a huge task to undertake. Is that still the grind, or do you feel that people are more receptive to, hi guys, I'm here to help you optimize?
we'd like to think that we wouldn't just ever turn up to a building without them knowing that
Well,
something's
I hope
happening.
this.
And you are right in the sense that the buyer is not necessarily always the users, because you might have something at a strategic level where they really want to embrace and push through, and they'll give you some contracts, and then they'll give you the building contacts. But that's where we then we'll deploy, but that's when we do the onboarding and the workflow pieces, making sure that we know everyone in that process who needs to be involved is involved and is aware of what's going on. The resistance to change is waning. It was probably a lot more difficult a decade ago.
Yeah.
But still, people are proud. Like in this industry, if someone's worked in a building and they've been either an engineer or a supervisor, a building manager for 15, 20 years, and you put software in that tells them that there's loads of things wrong with the building, that's going to be a difficult conversation to have. But that's where it's a case of, we're not here to tell you what you're doing wrong or what you haven't been doing. We're here to help you make it easier.
Is that always the case though? Surely if you've been like, if I owned a building and I put you guys into it, and the first report I get back, or I log into the dashboard and see there's a huge amount of savings and a huge amount of things that are, whether it's run times, heating and cooling, I would probably want to call up the person I've thought was looking after it and shout down the phone at them. Is that not a reality, or is it a case by case?
It's a case by case, but it's very, very difficult to see all of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
And buildings are live. Like, you can have everything running absolutely perfect in a building, and a single sensor fails somewhere in the system and it knocks everything out. And you then end up with your chillers running 24/7, and that could put extra pressure on the pumps, and then one of the pumps fails, and then that has another issue on another part of the system. And you won't see that until someone complains or you're doing a PPM. Most planned maintenance is done monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly. So you might have done a PPM on a chiller yesterday. The next one isn't for another 6 months. So unless someone complains,
you don't
you're
know.
not going to know. And you can't have an engineer, controls level technology engineer sitting at a head end of a PC 365 days a year. And even with the bureaus that some of the FM companies have got and the BMS companies, they need to know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And I know you've been in BMS rooms.
Too many.
Immediately when you go in, there's probably 100, if not 1,000 alarms that are just going off on the BMS.
Yeah.
And they just become noise.
Yeah.
So being able to take that and say, ignore 995 of them, here are the 5 that you need to concentrate on. That's where you can sort of win over the teams. So we can make these better in terms of not arguing, but making the argument to the end client of, you should have found it before. We can illustrate how difficult that is to find it. And that's why they embrace something like a demand logic.
Yeah.
Obviously there's different cases, and
of course. Yeah. But no, it's an interesting take on it. It's not always a tool to be shouted at or to use to basically, have a go at the people looking after it. It's like you're kind of contextualizing how difficult it was for them before, and this is why you've got us in to help you solve the problem and move it forward.
We certainly wouldn't want to be used as a stick, because fundamentally those are the people that are going to be fixing the building and making the building work.
And I think that is kind of leans quite nicely into my favorite one. You've been, I wouldn't say openly opinionated about AI or the use of AI within building controls and software platforms that are out there, but a lot of things you mentioned involve a human.
Yep.
And with the rise and excitement, enthusiasm around AI, is there not a world in which the things that you talk about and see being done, can't AI just do that, and you don't need an engineer to go to those buildings?
The way AI has developed in the last 6 months even, but the last couple of years, it has changed. The game's changed, and there are a lot more useful tools, and the tools are continuously changing and developing and being more useful. In terms of replacing engineers on sites, no, is the simple fact of it, because unless it's an AI automated robot that can go around and change a broken damper or replace a faulty sensor, you're always going to need those engineers. And then equally, there is the human element of that. Is if you're in a building and you're based there every single day as a building user, you know that the engineer is there and they've been there for 10 years and you know their name. You might say, "Morning, Dave," and
Yeah.
come in, and if something going wrong, they do their site walkarounds and they'll get a relationship with the people, and they get that human centric aspect of understanding how the building works. But the reality is assets will break and you will need to replace them. You can automate some of the controls side of it,
Yeah.
and that will happen, but largely controls are automated anyway. So the only thing that our AI could benefit in that way is writing more complex and more rigid coding, which is very good at.
Yeah.
But then that's ensuring that that is delivered through into the control strategy and that actually works for the building. If you've not got someone physically with their finger on the pulse of the building, it might not necessarily understand that something's not worked.
Yeah.
And that comfort blanket of having someone there if the proverbial hits the fan,
Yeah.
an AI agent isn't going to be able to stop a flood or
Yeah.
unblock a toilet.
Yeah. It's an increasing thing where we hope that the rise of AI will galvanize those to structure their data in-house, which will make them data curious about the things that are going on in their buildings. And then suddenly when they ask the question of their buildings, I'd like to know these factors, whether it's energy, whether it's comfort, whether it's complaints. And when you realize that sometimes those things are sat on an on-premise building management system covered in dust, AI can't get access to that data. So we're kind of hoping that it will lead on to people understanding the value of having a software platform in their building that's able to bring the information from that building into their boardroom, wherever it might be in the country.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that you're hearing those things of the curious nature of AI in that lens, as opposed to actually replacing people on the ground.
Absolutely. And it's something we've been working on for years. I mean, even our entire scoring methodology, the way in which we built out our entire asset categorization model and algorithms within that was all using machine learning.
Yeah.
But it was before AI was a fancy
Before it was sexy
buzzword.
Yeah.
And it's just been something that's been inherent in how Demand Logic is built. But we don't use AI for tick box purposes. Like we use it day to day, as everyone does. And obviously in the back end and the way in which it's developed and can support the dev teams with coding and elements like that, we're all for it. The reason why AI has launched so quickly is because of large language models that are read off the internet. There are no large language models for building performance.
Yeah.
Demand Logic don't know every single company out there, but we've probably arguably got the biggest data set of building performance data in the industry. About 160 billion data sets of building models, asset information, all combined with expert human input and interactions through the actions that have been put through the platform.
Yeah.
That's all aligned. And all of that is an absolute goldmine for an AI to come in and say, this is how you run a building. If X means Y, then this is potentially the cause. The reason why we're taking things slowly is because we want to do what's right for our customers. We do things properly and we don't want to rush things out there. We've got long-standing customers. We always deliver on what we say we will. So being able to make sure that everything is in the right place, we have stuff that we're constantly, from an R&D perspective, assessing and making sure that if we can implement certain aspects of AI, it needs to be right for whether that's in the back end or whether it's something that can contextualize the data, enabling us to build a platform even quicker, or it can support our technical account management teams in better diagnosing a solution. And if that works well, then we can roll it out to our customers, all that sort of thing. So we're constantly working with stuff in the background, but my stance hasn't changed in AI is going to replace engineers because...
Well, no, I mean, I'm the reason why I asked the question is I've always enjoyed your riposte to it, which is AI can do a huge amount in the automation of what it can do, but it can't, unless there's a robot, you still need an engineer to go and physically replace it. And we work in a bricks and mortar industry, so there's a huge amount that can be done, but there's a huge amount that right now you still need a human to do it. That is still relevant, I think, in the industry, and you can't AI your way out of fact you still need humans to do certain parts and roles in buildings.
No, and I mean, it is all about the data set. Like the sort of stuff that Demand Logic have as a data set and a model is not really there from 10 years before. It's new because all of that data was just going into the ether, and being able to have that source. But where I'd urge caution is obviously with systems saying we're AI generated, because what training set is that based on? And where has that information come from? Is it just a chatbot?
Yeah.
How useful is that realistically?
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, if you give people access to too much, they will find something. So if we put a chatbot on Demand Logic saying what's wrong with my building, that's got to crunch through 16 billion data sets a day.
Yeah.
Being able to push that through and say what's wrong with my building, and
not blowing up or, costing the earth and the energy itself. I suppose in the benefit of being around for a long time, and that's a compliment, not an insult, especially in the world of innovation with businesses coming and going quite quickly. Have you seen like major trends in the working relationships with landlords? Like over the years, have the challenges, have they changed? Like, is the industry moving in a different direction, or do we still find we're solving the same problems from 10 years ago?
I'd say one of the biggest changes from a landlord perspective is they're much more interested in what's going on.
Yeah.
And we definitely saw it with one of our asset management clients, and it was a real eye-opener for us in terms of our performance scorecard, which is the scoring and the gamification, sitting there in a room where usually just present it, and then all of a sudden the asset managers wanted to be at the top of the table.
Yeah.
So the asset managers started actively getting involved in the operation of the building, and they would working with the FM team. What's going on with this? Why have we not got this done? Oh, I'm waiting for that PO. Okay, there it is, done.
Yeah.
So inadvertently, by gamifying it, they got much more involved in what was going on in the building in an industry where historically you'd leave it to the property manager and then the FM team to sort out the operation of the building. Tell me what everything else is going on, the important stuff. How can I market this building and how can I increase the value of it?
So I suppose in a way, distilling down what is a very complicated data set within a building into a digestible scorecard is sort of helped galvanize I can understand what a 50 is and what 70 is.
Yeah, because before that, it would be what's your best performing building, the one that's making me the most money.
Yeah.
Arguably, that's probably still the case.
Probably is, yeah.
But in terms of the best performing building, if you're looking at valuations and where potentially you might want to exit an asset and move it on or dispose of it, you don't want to end up with stranded assets. So if you know that a building's really badly performing, the cost of improving that is going to massively outweigh any benefit you'll gain from it. Get rid.
Yeah.
And you need that data and that insight. But I also think the reporting side, and not necessarily any pressure from government or anything, it's been the industry that's changed it with reporting. Things like GRESB and other aspects of reporting mean that the landlords are now responsible for that reporting. So they need to take an active role.
Yeah.
And they can't just push it down
to someone else's job. Yeah. As you know, we spend a lot of time auditing buildings and looking at the tech stack behind them. And we are fortunately unfortunate to know that most buildings are snowflakes. So in the rounds of the general challenges, is there still the case that every building is different, or are you seeing a bit more standardization? Is it becoming easier to deploy what you guys do, or is every building that different and therefore you have a different challenge to solve?
In terms of the corporate office estate, I'd probably say yes. And that's coming with some of the antiquated networks that are completely proprietary. They're sort of dying out, and naturally things get upgraded and replaced, which then the move towards more open-based protocols make it easier to get the data out. But equally, people say they're open and they've not been commissioned properly, so the data's not necessarily there.
But do you find that when we go into a digital building consultancy project on a new build and we'll be asked to write out the smart building strategy, often the question we'll say is, well, what's working well for you today in your existing assets? Unless it's the first building they've built, which probably isn't the case. With the legacy data you have of 10 years or 15 years back, do you find yourselves in a position now to actually identify some commonality of buildings that perform well or don't? Or is it a case of, because it's case by case, there's that idea is not deliverable, of this is the right tech stack to get you the right outcome?
I think from a tech stack, that understanding's definitely got much better. Okay. And we've also now got tenfold type of solutions. The development of our data acquisition device now on version 3, rather than version 1, and it's opened up much more possibilities and protocols and even different systems within the same data acquisition device. So being able to access all of that, much better, much simpler. In terms of, are we seeing the same problems from a similar type of building? No.
Okay.
And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Every building is different.
No building's the same. Last year we installed in 2 buildings, both same landlord, both same FM team, exactly the same size, give or take 1,000 square foot.
Yeah.
Completely different issues. Both built they were both built as a joint project across the road from each other, and completely different issues.
Does not think that is like the barriers to entry or adoption and scale with companies, like wrestling with the fact that every time you rock up to a building, you're probably going to face a different challenge. That's got to be not a thankless task, because that is part of the joy of trying to solve the problem. You can't scale it in a way which is a copy and paste, because you've got to take the problem head on as you find it.
I think all the problems that we're identifying, as long as they're getting resolved, we're happy. Because, as you know from history, we're a mission-driven company.
Yeah.
We want to make buildings work properly. We want to massively reduce the energy impact, and especially with the geopolitical scenario going on currently, what's going to happen in the next quarter, next probably 12 months following that is energy spikes, massive energy costs, and then all of a sudden the drive shifts back to, I need to save energy costs rather than pushing on other things. So
that's interesting.
It never sits still.
Yeah.
But as long as there's actions coming through the platform that have been completed and we can see the impact that it's having, I think probably something around about 30,000 tons of carbon last year that we took out of buildings. And as long as we're doing that, then we're happy. And
the building should be happy too. Have you seen a change in who you go and talk to? Is it the facilities guys that are doing the actions? Is it the owners? Is it the property managers? Like, who do you find yourself sat in a room with more often than not?
I always say everyone, because
okay.
it does.
It's a big boardroom.
Well, it always goes down to it, because everyone's involved in delivering. And that's what I said earlier in terms of getting everyone on board and on the same trajectory as this is what we're doing. We want everyone on board because we need everyone on board. But there has certainly been a shift, and it's sort of come from initially the asset managers really trying to drive things, and then getting down to the facilities managers to, we need to do something about this. And whether that's because energy savings and they're getting pressure from the landlords, but we definitely see the FM industry start moving and shaking.
Yeah.
Which, if you think of the FM industry as a glacier, that sort of illustrates it. If you see it start moving, something quite significant's happening.
Yeah.
Because it is so slow to move. I've been on that particular journey for 16 years now, trying to change the industry and make any kind of adjustment away from SFG 20 or planned and preventative and reactive maintenance. But there are increasing amounts of customers that are adopting us and trying to think of, and the questions coming from them saying, how do we implement demand logic to enable this, and what will that impact?
Yeah. And when, I know no one ever likes to talk about a project that doesn't go well, but that happens, right? You can't not have no one has a perfect platform, and if they do, they're definitely lying. Is there a consistency in a deployment that doesn't go well that you've identified and looked to iron out?
There's probably 2. So there's two types. One is that the infrastructure isn't what they said it was. So you're trying to connect, and then...
So what, as in you've been told that there's something in a building, you've got to that building and it's not as sold?
So if we're told it's a certain type of protocol, and we've gone and tried to discover aspects on that protocol, and there's like 5 assets, but we can see a load of other networks, but they're not opened up and they're not connected. So then we have to do a lot of work to try and go in and create solutions for the customer, because that information's not been correct from deployment. We, as you know, we try and do a lot of pre-auditing and understanding to make sure that when our teams are doing deployments, we know everything that we should be seeing. And if that's not right, then that's a bit of an annoyance, because we pride ourselves on how quickly we can get into a building, get a building platform built and delivered to the customer. So that slightly irks us, but
Yeah, that's number one.
yeah.
What's number two then?
And then number two is the people aspect. And when you know that there's lots of actions and opportunities, but you're not getting the buy-in from the site team. So although things are changing, people are embracing it more, you will still have those site teams saying, I don't have any time to deal with this or look at this. And the actions are there, I've completed them. And you can see in the platform, they've not actually completed them.
Yeah.
So they haven't got that buy-in. So ultimately it looks as though things aren't being done and there's no impact. Going back to the ROI,
yeah,
we're reliant on others to achieve that ROI, but fundamentally we can see it. And it's not so much the fact that the savings aren't there, it's the fact that we know that this building's hemorrhaging energy and the team on site don't care
enough to solve
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So-
Which I suppose has got to be a bit of a challenge for you because the success or ROI outcome is still heavily people related.
Yeah, and you still need the people to make those changes. There are sort of different ways and methods that we can do it now, but fundamentally you're still going to be working with those people on site.
Yeah.
And we can write back to BMS and make changes and change set points and write control strategies now. So being able to implement those, but if the simple things aren't being done,
Yeah.
then you're not going to sort of take it to stage 2 and 3. And it's more the frustration of why don't you want this build? Why don't you want the building to work better? Why don't you want to make your life easier?
Yeah, which is probably seems like very painfully obvious, but if you can't turn their heads to it, I suppose you answered it kind of earlier where you have to go and that onboarding piece of bringing everyone on the journey as opposed to I've sold it into the owner or the fund manager and I've turned up at your building, obviously, which you don't do, but the need to bring everyone on the journey to understand the collective vision is pretty important to make sure. Otherwise you get the most out of it. Otherwise it's another software platform that sits in a building's service charge budget that's not delivering the value it could do, which is, potentially blocked by those things, which is,
Because fundamentally, that's the entire reason that any of us work in this industry is to give people comfortable places to work.
Yeah.
And that gets lost in a lot of things.
Yeah.
With savings and money making and profits. But the only reason all of us are there is because companies need people to work in offices.
Yeah.
And those people need to be comfortable and productive.
Yeah. Well, it should be a pretty low baseline, but that is the overall objective of it. I suppose maybe that's your definition of a smart building, a comfortable building for people that work in it.
It's not my definition of a smart building.
What is your definition of a smart building? There you go.
Walked into that one, didn't I?
You did. You teed yourself up for it.
It's making use of the data for me is if you've got networks and information in the building, make use of that data, and a smart building is one that is making use of that data.
Okay.
Because you could have a load of different technology stacks sitting there, but they're not actually doing anything. I don't think that's necessarily the definition of a smart building.
Yeah.
If you're taking the data and it's operating off of data-led operation, so if you've got the CO2 sensors and then you put in a control strategy that's sort of demand-led strategy looking at CO2 levels against fresh air supply, and you can see that changing within a platform, for me, that's a smart building. But because it's operating, it's doing something intelligent.
Yeah.
Having a shiny page with things you can click don't necessarily
buy into that.
Illustrate a smart
I think
building.
ours is quite similar to that. Mine's a little bit more blunt than yours, which is more that a smart building should be that if no one's there, turn the expletive off, which is adaptive by design as opposed to turning the thing on 100%, running it and turning it off. I think buildings should be able to adapt. That's what a smart building is. If no one's there, less lights, less heating, less cooling, save money and do these things a bit better. It's my low bar of don't care how you get there, but just think about it on that basis. Well, look, the final two questions I ask every guest is my first one, I'm sure I know the answers to for you, but is what's the one thing in technology today that you wish more people knew about?
I think it's not necessarily a technology. The one thing I wish is that people knew the difference between the technologies.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of different solutions out there. Sort of alluded to them earlier, but like indoor air quality sensors, smart buildings platforms, and digital twins, master systems integrators, MSIs, and everything in between. Plus then you've got the tenant engagement apps and everything. You've got an energy software service, you've got energy metering.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of different products. Being able to decipher at least understanding of what each of them do in a roundabout way would be useful.
And PropTech map, maybe. Something like that. There you go. And my final question is, in the world of innovation, who should be leading or the leading force in it? The owner of the building, the property and facilities manager, or the occupiers? Who should be driving forward innovation?
It won't surprise you that I'm going to say all of them, because everything needs to be a combined effort. I know not every single person can drive, but each of them can drive in a different way.
Okay.
For me, I think obviously the landlord is the owner. If they push, then people will listen. But fundamentally, the facilities managers, if you're improving a building and the actual operation of a building, which is the environment we work in, they're in control of that. So they need to drive that aspect. So it needs to be a combined effort.
It's not just one person.
And the ones that have the most power of all is the occupiers. And whether that's a tenant or an FRI occupier, they're the ones that vote with their feet if something doesn't change.
So you've gone for all of them as opposed to one.
Yep.
Okay, nice. Well, look, thanks so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. Fascinating to talk a bit more about what Demand Logic do, but also kind of the wider industry, which I always appreciate. As a man who's been in the industry for a number of years, it's always nice to chew the fat, and I'm sure we could do another hour and a half of this talking about fun things, albeit the carbon dioxide levels might not be as good in here.
My voice will completely go.
Your voice might go. But look, thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Freddie.
No worries, man.